Okay. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Good evening. Good morning. No. Joke. Good evening, people in Brazil. Good afternoon for our special guest, dear Susan Katie. Thank you for joining us. For those who don't know me, I am Carla Belangeiro, co-chair of WCD Brazil and audit partner of KPMG. We appreciate you being with us today. This year we organized 9 spotlight events, and the last one will happen in December. First of all, we would like to say thank you to our co-chairs in WCD Brazil, Leila Loria, Inês Souza, and Mariane Coutinho. Thank you, Daniel Mota and his company, BMI. Thank you, Laura Trappi. And finally, thank you, Maíra, our exceptional manager supporting us in WCD Brazil. Some observations now. We are online in WCD channel in YouTube. Our event is being recorded. Today, we talking about diversity. Today, we talking about diversity in the boardroom, and the better person to share her knowledge with us is Susan Kaling. She is the CEO of WCD Foundation in US, and with her, our dear Mariane Coutinho, co-chair WCD Brazil and the lead partner for tax transformation and innovation of the KPMG. I hope that we have one amazing event. Enjoy.
Thank you, Carla. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome on board, Susan Keating. It's a pleasure, it's an honor to have you here with us in Spotlight, this special series that we created during the pandemic in Brazil. So we were very creative since we were not capable of meeting each other. We had the pleasure to have hosted a few spotlights, as Carla mentioned, and it's a pleasure to by the end of 2020, this amazing year, having you here with us. And so before we start, I will just share a few recommendations and guidelines to our audience, if you allow me, Susan. And I will speak in Portuguese just to make the message very clear to everyone here, okay? Bom, pessoal, a gente vai até 18h40 com a Susan. A ideia é a gente ter um bate-papo inicial com ela. Fizemos das outras vezes também aqui no Spotlight. Eu vou pedir para vocês manterem, por favor, os microfones desligados sempre que não estiverem falando, por duas razões. Primeiro, pelo ruído na gravação, e segundo, que toda vez que a gente abre o microfone, como na gravação a gente destaca quem está falando, vocês ficam na tela principal no lugar da nossa palestrante. Então, eu vou pedir a vocês que tenham um cuidado especial com isso. E diferentemente das outras sessões do Spotlight, onde nós tivemos as nossas breakout rooms para debriefing da apresentação, desta vez nós não teremos este formato, nós teremos perguntas ao vivo para a própria Susan, e vocês mesmos podem ter a palavra e perguntarem ao vivo, ou, se preferirem, colocarem as perguntas no chat. Eu posso fazer, ou a Maíra pode fazer no seu lugar. Para a gente ter uma fila, uma organização dessas perguntas, eu vou pedir a vocês que, por gentileza, deixem muito claro no chat, coloque pergunta em caixa alta para a Maíra conseguir saber que de fato é uma pergunta e não simplesmente um comentário, flow de acompanhamento do chat. E também coloque o nome de vocês, porque algumas pessoas usam codinomes incríveis no Zoom e a gente não consegue saber exatamente o nome e sobrenome adequadamente de quem está falando, tá bom? Então, Susan, back in the game. Sorry for this long introduction. In Portuguese, I was just sharing how we are going to manage our time with you. So as we arranged before, we have a first part with our previous selected questions for you and Marianne also. And then we'll have an open session with everyone here. And we are, very looking forward to this open session. It's always very intriguing and very exciting for everyone. So before we start, I'd like to give you, the opportunity to introduce yourself, and also how WCD was founded, was created since the beginning, and then we will be ready to go. Thank you again for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much, and what a pleasure to be invited. I have been hearing about this Spotlight series, and it just says a lot about how innovative and creative our chapter members and our chapters are to really connect and share information and, network during particularly what are very challenging times. Some of us earlier were saying we can't believe that 2020 is almost over. Having said that, we still are not able to get together in person. I would much prefer to be with all of you and be able to shake hands and give you hugs and everything else, but that's just not part of the program right now. Our hope is that as we get through 2021 and beyond, we will be able at some point to do in-person meetings again. But that's, again, that's for the future. So I would just like to say hola. I do not speak Portuguese, but my team said I ought to be able to do that without totally embarrassing myself. And I am the CEO of Women Corporate Directors. Many of you, most of you are members, but I know there are mentors here and other guests. Our organization is a global organization. We are over 20 years old, in fact, just getting to 20 years. And we have 76 chapters, 2,400 members around the world that I like to say represent really some of the most powerful and successful women in the world. One of the things that I hope we have a chance to talk about, Danielle, at the end is just ways that we can connect our members in Brazil with some of our other chapters and some of our other members in different geographies. One of the things that we are finding is this real common ground and interest in getting to know one another, sharing experiences, best practices, and so forth. So I would say we are 20 years old. We were founded by Susan Stoutberg, who had a vision of where she felt that women in the boardroom needed a safe place to connect, to share, to learn. And again, over the course of 20 years, her 17 years with the organization, she helped kind of create this, what I would say, very formidable and wonderful organization. I actually joined as the CEO 3 years ago. And prior to joining WCD as
Just 1 second, Susan. Something happened with your mic.
There we go. Okay,
yes.
I'm back again. Good, thank you. But again, I joined Women Corporate Directors as the CEO 3 years ago, but previously had been a member of the Washington, D.C. chapter, one of the founding members. Spent many years in financial services, was the CEO of a major bank on bank boards, insurance company boards, and interestingly, globally, ended up on the executive committee of Allied Irish Banks, headquartered in Dublin, Ireland. So I spent a lot of time overseas in Europe. So that's enough about me. I'm just delighted to be here, and I'd like to get into the program, Danielle, and just, again, thank you to the leadership here. I guess another piece of history I'd like to share, 2015, KPMG actually stepped in and acquired the assets of Women Corporate Directors, moved us to be a nonprofit 501c3, but has continued to be a wonderful, wonderful global lead sponsor, and not only helps us at the foundation level at WCD with a lot of support, but as you know, in chapters around the world, they help to plan events and really provide a lot of thought leadership and guidance and so forth. So thank you to KPMG. So Daniel, back to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Mary, do you want to say, to add something as an introduction, and then we move on?
Yes, thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you, Susan. It's really a pleasure to have you here and to provide the opportunity to our local members to meet you. I think you're a very wonderful CEO, and it's really a pleasure for WCD to have you, leading our chapters around the world. And I think you said KPMG purchased the assets, but the subsequent step, we actually contributed these assets into a foundation, right? So KPMG is not the owner of WCD, just for the person to clarify.
Yeah, we donated the assets, created a separate legal entity, which was very wonderful, but continue to be a sponsor. Yes, so we're independent, great. But we have a wonderful relationship.
Yeah, just to clarify. But, I have the pleasure to be the co-chair together with Leila Loria, Carla Belangero, and Inês Souza here in Brazil for 6 years already. But I'm one of the founding members as well. So 10 years ago, when WCD came to Brazil and started the chapter here, I was in the first meeting. And I had then the opportunity also to join some of our Global Institute meetings in New York and some of the Americas Institute in Florida. So it was very good as well to see how big we are and the quality of our members, not only in the US, but around the world. I think the most prestigious directors, female directors in the world are currently associated with WCD. So this is very good. And then we were very inspired, of course, to do the same type of great job here in Brazil. And we have all these women. Now we have more than 230 members here in Brazil. We really want to foster the diversity in boards here in Brazil. And we also want to foster this board career of all these incredible women we have here. And we can only do that together with the help of our friends, I would say like that. So thank you again for all the executive search firms, all the investors, all the mentors, all the entrepreneurs and chairs that we have here, not only today with us, but recurrently in our events. Thank you, Daniel.
All right. So, Susan, before we jump to the agenda of diversity and gender equality and all the perspectives that we can have from WCD around the world, I'd like to hear from you what's the roadmap for 2021, since 2020 didn't happen. So what's in your roadmap?
Around diversity or more broadly speaking?
From WCD perspective, I mean, what's
WCD perspective?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, what's the roadmap for the association?
Well, we have a number of very exciting things that are happening. One of which is that we have just transitioned to a new governing body, a new board that includes 3 new KPMG partners, but 2 independent members. In addition to our lead director, Camila Saro. So we have a new governing body that is very focused with us in looking at several things. One is to grow the membership and to make sure that women that are serving on boards are aware of WCD and the opportunities that WCD represents. It is also to grow our relationships with companies and corporations. There is no question that by raising awareness with companies around the world about the importance of gender equity on boards, but also the fact that we have 2,400 members that are qualified and potential future board members that companies and so forth cannot say there are not board-ready candidates. So we are doing quite a bit with sponsors and companies to do a lot of outreach. The third kind of key area that is important to us is we are going to continue to focus on virtual programming. We had, as Marianne mentioned, WCD, the foundation, has several major institutes every year. Some of those are regional, then there's the Global Institute. We do other research and thought leadership with partners and sponsors, and again, do a lot of outreach and a lot of different things for members. We actually this last year created some additional services that include increasing our model for and our service for matching board opportunities with our membership. And I encourage any of you that are interested in getting on boards to follow what is going on with those board opportunities. Cynthia Falardo, I can see you, but you might want to raise your hand. Cynthia is our Senior Director of Membership and actually leads that initiative on our behalf. And so again, board opportunities are important. We also, as I said, are doing quite a bit even beyond the institutes. We are doing a lot of virtual programming and have had over 23 virtual programs that have been very well attended by members all around the world. So if you are currently a member and have not been able to attend any of those virtual programs, you can actually go in, we've recorded all those, and you can get access to them. And they cover they're very often led by sponsors and cover topics, whether it's supply chain issues, compensation, executive compensation, human capital issues, whether it is around, kind of what's next with, healthcare and the coronavirus and those sorts of things. And then we also have some informal opportunities for members to join what we call our cafes and just have a chance to talk and get to know one another. So Danielle, that's kind of what is in the future. It's exciting. And I would just say one of the things that I was very pleased to share with our new board is that WCD is growing. We have more members than we had the prior year. We have more renewals than the prior year. We have more sponsors and sponsor dollars, even though we had to cancel our in-person Global Institute. We had a virtual institute where we had twice the number of people attending than we would have had if we'd had it in person in New York. So lots there. And again, I just encourage all of you here in Brazil. I will quote one of our members from Australia who said, it's been important for me to be a member of WCD, but it's even more important now because she said I can connect with members from the UK, from the US and San Francisco, from Colombia, and basically have a peer discussion on topics that are critical to me, that I may not have represented in my own chapter, on those same committees and so forth. So I'm thrilled again, and the prospects look good. Key is we'd like to get beyond 2021 and again, have a chance to pull members together both at a chapter level in person, but also on a global and institute basis as well.
Wonderful, Susan. Wow, a lot of things to do in 2021. And so now move on in our agenda. And maybe the goal, our first question here will be to have a better portrait on diversity on boardrooms. So we have a number here in Brazil, and Marianne can also add some comments after you. So here in Brazil, the numbers are still very low. We have a research from Spencer Stewart, the board index, that points out that only 11.5% of board positions at public listed companies are held by women. And we know that in US, the global average is 23% and US 24%. So my question to you is can you share with us what was the evolution, the process from 0 to 24%? What were the best practice, not only US, but maybe also in Europe, to increase women positions in boardrooms?
Well, it has honestly been a journey. And again, as someone who personally has had board experience, I was on boards of banks and also insurance companies. I would say if I think of WCD and think about our journey in the US over the last 20 years, it has been slow going. Candidly, if you go back to the year 2000 and go back 20 years ago, just a little under 11%, 10.9% of the board seats were filled with women. Now, if you sort of take that to 2012, we got that number, and I don't say WCD did, but women represented 12.7% by 2010. And it has just been since then, now 2020, that we've seen a dramatic increase to get us to the 26%. But it's still nowhere near where we should be. And I would just say what has helped to kind of help the journey is that we saw a couple of things happen, one of which is our state of California actually passed legislation that mandated and required, they did that in 2000, that by 2009, by the end of 2019, they passed it in 2018, boards headquartered in California would have to have at least one woman on the board. And over a multi-year period, that would have to increase depending upon the size of the board. And what is interesting about that is that that mandate has made a difference, as we have also seen in Europe, for example. In Europe, we have a number of countries that have required quotas. And just as an example, that's Norway, Iceland, France, Spain, Germany, Belgium. I mean, these countries have made some real progress. And in fact, sort of like the US, they represent about 26% of the boards. Women are 26% on those boards in Europe. So I think whether or not one believes or likes quotas, and we have members that believe strongly that quotas should be mandated. We have other members that believe in the free market and think we will get there. So WCD has never taken a specific position around quotas. What we have said is that whatever it takes to make it work and happen, we support that. Separate from the government intervention, two other sort of critical stakeholders have made a difference, one of which is the investor community. State Street and others have basically said, this is what you need to do, and have required that companies that they're investing in demonstrate that they are supporting diversity and women on boards. And then many of you know that small company, Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is one of our sponsors, and they actually took a very strong position that said they would not kind of do business with or take companies public that didn't have at least one woman on the board. So the corporate community, the private sector, the government intervention, the investor community, I think is making a difference. You add to that the rest, other stakeholders that include customers, that include employees of these companies, that are saying it is important to have more diversity overall. And I think we're headed in a positive direction.
And when we expand the challenge for a racial matter, the scenario is even worse. I mean, if you are talking about Black women in boards, the statistic that we have here is no one in Brazil. And we have several reasons for that poor performance. And Marianne can share about the new program that WCD is sponsoring in Brazil. But before that, what could you share with us about the Black women challenge in boardrooms in US and Europe?
Well, I would just say to you, the numbers are not encouraging. That we have made some progress, but we have not been intentional enough. When I say we, companies, boards have not been intentional enough and the numbers are not good. And I would actually say if I go back to California, for example, well, and let me just say, and I want to use California as an example because it goes beyond kind of Black women and diversity. If you take a look at California, in 2018, 30% of the boards consisted of men. They were men only. Now that number is down to 3%. So women now, 96% of those boards have at least one woman. That's progress. That's good. However, of the 511 seats that have been filled in California since the law was signed into effect, listen to this, only 17 of those seats are filled by US Latinas, and that's 3.3%. And I mention this because I'm a native of California. I live in Florida today, but I'm a native of California, and 39% of the population is Latino. So there is a disconnect there. You add to that, so white women make up the largest number of the progress and the increase, but African American women are at 5.3%, so they're a little better than Latinas. But if you look at the Asian women, actually they're a little bit better in California than others at 11.5%. Again, that's what's interesting in Asia. If I take a look at Asia overall, for example, they are at 9.3%, Middle East 9.5%. So they are behind where you are in Brazil, just in terms of women, not in terms of Blacks. One of the challenges, Daniel, and I'm going to let Marianne speak to this, is that people say to me, how many women of color are on boards in the U.S. or how many within the membership? And we have never, companies and, basically ISN, we have not required disclosures. And, part of the issue here is people self-identify. And if they want to disclose, they can, but there's been no requirement for that. So we only know within our database, for example, those of our members that have said, I am Black or I'm Latina, I'm Asian, whatever. And that's something that I'll come back to after I let Marianne talk a little bit, because we have some very specific plans to change all that.
All right, Mary, please.
Thank you, Susan, for sharing. I think we have probably a worse situation here in Brazil for Black women, and I think the reason for that is some of the reasons we faced in the past, we still face, but used to face much more for women in general. So, for example, when we talk about networking, we know that one of the best ways of getting a board seat is to have a good networking and the right networking. I don't think Black women are part of this networking, including WCD, and we recognize that because currently we probably have only 2 Black women as members out of our 200 plus, which is almost nothing. And this is, our situation, but it's also mirroring what we have already in general. So when we talk to Black women now, because we're getting closer to them and we try to understand where they are not in our IBGC, the NSCD equivalent. They're not in WCD. They are not sitting in boards and talking to other directors. So where are them in terms of networking? So this is one thing. The other thing is role models. So also we talked to them and we invited the women who are currently participating in our program, and I will explain the program later. But when we invite them to the program, they said, to become a board member, what is that? I don't know. So this is not something most of them, they were not even considering this as a possibility. They are not being inspired by that idea. We are not communicating to them about what they would have to do, what they would have to make to be able to be on a board, and what we also could benefit from them. So this conversation was not happening at all. And of course, that we also have our list of skills, or what is the right profile to sit on my board. And if this is already leaving outside all the Black women, because we want as a profile something that they do not have, because they have probably not gone to the same colleges that we were, or they didn't have the same background that most had. They sometimes didn't live abroad, don't have an international experience, for example. If this is the profile that you're looking, and you're just trying to find a different color of skin, so you're probably doing this wrong, right? Because when we talk about diversity, it's not only having a different color in the skin sitting in your boardroom. Is really having different people coming from different backgrounds, and that will have something different to contribute to the discussion. But the other thing is, we normally hear what we used to hear about women in general. So we don't have qualified women. So it's the same. We don't have qualified Black people. We don't have qualified Black women to the boards. And then when you do a research and you go where they are in their networking, it's a different networking. You see wonderful women, very qualified women that would for sure contribute to the board. So this is, I think, the problem. So it's the root cause. We have to fight against the root cause. And first thing is to recognize that we can benefit from having full diversity on the boards. And then we have to take this step forward to look for these professionals in the market. So about Conselheira 101 or Conselheira 101, what we did is during the pandemic, we were thinking about the entire hashtag Black Lives Matter and our own situation, and the fact that we didn't have many Black women in WCD as well, and we didn't have diversity, racial diversity on the boards. What could we do? And then we found some people that were thinking about the same subject at the same time. So we partnered. So we have different women, some WCD members, some non-WCD members that came together to develop a plan. So the plan that we put together is we're going to identify a first group, a pilot group of very good executives, Black women executives that could be part of our program. And we are going to start this conversation around governance, corporate governance. So we designed a series of conversations around a period of 6 months. So we are finishing probably next month already. And we have 20 women that were selected and invited by the Black women of our group. So this was not me, this was not Leila, this was not Inez. So Black women who are part of this community, part of this network, identified those women, invited those women, and WCD helped with the subjects that we would like to discuss over this months. And we also identified board members, chairs that could contribute to this discussion. So we invite these people to talk to our group almost every Tuesday night. And so they have the opportunity to meet these women as well. So we're giving visibility to them on one hand. On the other hand, we are providing some content. It's not a course, but they can have, this first flavor. That's why it's 101 of what's corporate governance, what's the role of a board member, what are the risks involved, how can I be better prepared, what are the matters that I have to discuss, the knowledge that I probably have to develop if I don't have it yet. And it's been a very, very good experience in terms of being together. So the fact that we are all together and we have a screen full of colors is just amazing for everybody involved. So we are already started to think about the next one, because this pilot will finish next month, but for sure we're going to have another class. And what we want is not to stop there, because we want then to help them on a more individual basis and also help them to actually have their first board seat.
Wonderful. Susan, do you want to compliment something based on?
I absolutely would. First of all, I want to compliment you on your work and your leadership. We at WCD, given what we're seeing as the disruption overall because of the pandemic, the social and racial unrest that we're seeing in the US and in some other countries. I mean, we are seeing this, it's not a US situation only, but we actually joined other governance organizations that are US based, and we actually formed what we call the Diverse Corporate Directors Coalition, DCDC. And the DCDC represents, one organization is called Ascend, and they represent the Asian community. Another is LCDA, the Latino Corporate Directors Association that you may know about. We have another that is called the Forum that is around LGBT, the community on boards. And again, it represents underrepresented communities on boards today. So we formed a coalition and have actually worked together to come out with a major call to action. We felt that by doing this together, it would be stronger than any one particular organization. So we issued a call to action for equity and inclusion in the boardroom. And we actually came out with 3 key points where number 1, we said practice is critical and that every board needs to put into their sort of governance policies, if you will, a board equity goal, and they need to talk about their commitment and how they plan to get and fulfill that actual goal. The second kind of key area is around practice and accountability. Let me go back to policy. So first was policy, where you embed strong measures into the government's policies. Practice is the goal and actually, setting that equity goal. And then the third is the board needs to hold itself. It needs to disclose, should on their website, what progress they're making against their goals. They should disclose and hold management accountable, and so forth. So that's with the DCDC. So we have kind of this broad umbrella positioning that we've had. Separate from that, women corporate directors, we have taken, just as Mary Ann said, we have within WCD some of the most successful Black women anywhere. These are women on very top boards that are leading, those boards on strategy, helping them sort of figure out how best to be a better company and more successful company in the future, and so forth. So we actually put on a program through our virtual programming, through our WC Direct programming that was talking about diversity. And we had a panel that had a very honest, very direct kind of, sharing of what we need to do and how they've gotten where they are. We then, at our Global Institute, the Virtual Institute, did a much deeper dive. And in fact, Paul Knopp, who's the chairman in the US of KPMG, he sort of led the day with a discussion around corporate purpose with Tandra Jackson, who is a Black strategist. She's one of our new board members. So the two of them talked. We then had dialogue about the importance of diversity, and then had a deeper dive where we broke into breakout groups, had very honest discussions about what needs to be done. And so we are following that now. And in fact, just today, I'm not announcing it yet, but we are forming a steering committee that is going to lead WCD's diversity initiative. And we will include looking at what the DCDC has put out, what we've put out together with the associations. We will incorporate what we have had discussions about during these other programs. And in addition to that, one of our chapters in the US, and in fact, Marianne, you may want to reach out to our Minnesota chapter. Our Minnesota chapter has actually put a 2-year program together where they're going to kind of test out how they can reach out and get more Black women on boards joining the chapter, how to do that successfully. And they have a whole program around that. So we're going to bring that into this steering committee and again, come out with a very specific plan with measures and again, enough talk, more action, making it happen. WCD, we know that we have a diverse community. I mean, just by nature of being global, we represent women of color all over the world, but we do not have what I would say is a robust membership of very successful Black women on boards. And so we have work to do, to be very candid. And so we're going to get intentional, specific, and you will see changes over the course of the next couple of years.
All right. So Susan, now I think, I have one question last, but I will keep it to myself and maybe I'll ask you at the end. And the reason is that we have 4 great questions from our audience right now. So I will ask Chris Ashe to make her question to you, and then we move forward with the other question as well. Chris, please.
Well, it's thank you, Danielle. Susan, it's a great pleasure having you here with us. Unfortunately, through screen, but in the near future it will be better. I joined Women Corporate Directors Brazil chapter 5 years ago, and I'm really very interested in two things, if it's possible to share with us. What do you think about the presence of women on boards, serving on boards during this pandemic period? Do the boards with women more effective considering our soft skills? It's they are acting in a different way. That's my first question. And a second question, as far as I'm very close to women that are being formed to become board members, what about having board next in Brazilian chapter?
Excellent.
Is it something that you have in mind?
Well, 2 wonderful questions. And let me start with the pandemic. And what I have shared fairly publicly is that I believe that in crisis, there is opportunity. We all know that quote. And there is so much disruption that is a result of the health issues and the health crisis, but also because of just the unrest. It's a combination, and the financial issues that countries and companies are experiencing. So all those things are requiring boards to operate differently. You probably know many boards are meeting every other week instead of, on a regular schedule. Board members are actively engaged and actually much more operational than they have been in the past, whereas, the role of boards is to be more strategy and, basically, provide support and oversight of the CEO and make sure the company is sound financially and from a risk perspective. But we're seeing things change. And that's where, to use your words, Chris, the softer skills are coming into place. And we actually have had, we're seeing a pickup, an increase in inquiries about do we have board candidates? Companies are looking for more women. And again, some of that is driven by the diversity focus. But I think there is recognition that during these times, we need the diversity of skill in the boardroom in order to navigate and basically survive. So I'm optimistic that this crisis is it is encouraging boards and nominating committees to rethink the composition of their boards. And that's where I would say for those that are interested in getting on more boards or on a board, this is the time to build your own individual strategies to go forward. In terms of Board Next, just so that everyone knows, has been a pilot program that has been around now for a number of years. We have a chapter in New York and a chapter in Los Angeles. And actually, Board Next membership has been growing as more women that are in the C-suite or running major divisions, or certainly candidates eventually to join boards. They have an interest, and interestingly, that number has been growing, even though we've only had the 2 chapters. Now that things have gone so virtual, you don't have to live in New York or Los Angeles to attend. So we're seeing a real pickup and increase. So having said that, I actually, I mentioned earlier, WCD has a new board, and we spent some time talking about our expanding our Board Next program. And we were talking about that, and absolutely our strategy is to do just that, and to ultimately take Board Next, what I would call to scale, and really grow it. So that was part of the strategic work that was done a couple of years ago. The board has asked us to slow down right now, recognizing, and going back to Danielle's question, for 2021, our fiscal year goes July 1st to June 30th, 2021. So for this fiscal year, they have asked us to slow down on Board Next and instead go back to, let's make sure in this pandemic and this disrupted environment that we are growing our core membership, WCD, that we are doing the corporate outreach so we have more sponsors and more awareness with companies, and also to refine and continue to build on our virtual programming. And so let's put a pause on that for now, recognizing that that has been a part of our strategy. And as we look July 1st and beyond, we hope to kind of do some really more robust and exciting things with Board Next. So we would love to see, we know what great work you are doing with the next generation of board members in Brazil, and I really applaud you. And interestingly, people don't know, in fact, our board was sort of surprised to learn WCD has 7 staff members. If you compare that to NACD has 500 people. The head of NACD in the US said to me, his name is Peter Gleason, he said, Susan, what do you have, about 150 people on staff? And I said, no. I said, we have 7, and one of those is me. So we have limited resources, and thankfully KPMG and others kind of assist with a number of different things. But that's where we've had to prioritize, and Board Next is important to us, but we're going to give it a little pause for now.
Daniel, if I can just clarify for those who are not familiar with the concept of Board Next. So WCD in the US, they have 2 pilots for Board Next, I think in New York and California. So basically in those 2 places, they have Board Next, that is a special group of non-directors or directors to be. So women who aspire to be on boards, but do not qualify to become already WCD members, would join Board Next. And as soon as they reach their threshold and therefore they are eligible to join WCD, they can migrate to WCD. So because we know that in Brazil we have so many opportunities and so many qualified women who are not yet sitting on any boards, it's also an inspiration for us to bring the Board Next to Brazil as well. But we are, of course, always discussing and aligning with WCD in the US. Thank you, Susan.
Great, Mary. So Adriana Caetano, please ask your question to Susan.
Hi, thanks. The question I have is if there is any representation of women with disabilities in the board. I mean, I can see that we are thinking about diversity, and women with disabilities has a different way of thinking.
Adriana, teu microfone está muito ruim. Eu posso fazer a pergunta no seu lugar aqui?
Sim.
Posso? Desculpa, vou te ajudar aqui só pelo
áudio.
Pode,
eu acho que a minha rede está instável.
Tá bom, relax. Susan, I'm just asking permission to Adriana to jump and ask you her question, since her mic is not very good. So, I mean, her question is about representation of women with physical disabilities in the boards. What's your view on that kind of diversity in boardrooms?
Well, to be honest, that is the first time somebody has asked me that question. And I would just say that if you knew me well during my professional career, I would absolutely be an advocate. But I have no idea how many women with disabilities are currently on boards or even members of WCD. So I think that's a good question and a fair one. And now I'm going to go do some homework and try to learn more. But as a person, as the CEO of WCD, I would tell you, I would very much support it and advance in any way that I can.
Adriana, touchdown for you. So
thank you so much.
Thank you, Adriana.
So Katia Tokoro, please go ahead.
Hi, Susan. It's great to have you here. My question, if you could share your view, due to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris election, what challenges, and what opportunities do you see in terms of diversity and inclusion?
Well, good question. And I will say that WCD, Women Corporate Directors, is bipartisan. So we do not take a political position in the US or elsewhere. So we sort of stay out of politics, if you will. Having said that, there is no question that the fact that we have the first woman of color as the upcoming vice president and someone with her background that is both Black and Indian, Jamaican and Indian, is very powerful. And I think it says a lot about potentially the opportunity to see an increase and more support for diversity overall. So that I would just say I think it's encouraging, and but we haven't finalized everything yet. As you're probably following our politics, our current president has not stepped down or conceded. So it's going to be a very interesting couple of months as we get closer to the actual time when we will be inaugurating the next president of the United States.
Wonderful. Susana Paula Vitelli, please, go ahead.
Okay, hello, Susan. Nice to have you here. So my question is about how we bring men to this conversation. So there has been, we're just speaking about the percentage of the low percentages of women on boards. And despite of all the efforts that women make in terms of getting well prepared to step into board positions, initiatives such as WCD in terms of providing networking opportunities for women. I mean, in the end of the day, men are those who are making the decisions on the majority of the decisions in terms of new board members. So could you please comment in terms of how we can engage men more in that discussion? Please,
well, first of all, I would say they aren't making all decisions, but they are certainly the majority. And for those who know me, I love having men at the table. So it's wonderful. I would actually give a little history of WCD where going back 20 years ago, it really was all about a very kind of small network of women, and it was women only. Men were not invited to the table to have the discussions, to the meetings. And even when I joined as CEO and began to ask more men to attend as speakers or as sponsors to join us and that sort of thing, there were some members who weren't totally comfortable with that. But now 3 years later, If you take a look at the Global Institute, Anna Paula, this last one, we had a number of very powerful male and female speakers and keynotes that were just terrific. So number one, I support having men at the table. One of the things that I have seen a number of chapters do, almost similar to what, I'm looking on the screen right now, and I have right on the first screen without moving the screen, I see 1, 2, 3 men, so I applaud you and thank you for joining us. And I would say that we have chapters intentionally, at least annually, and some more frequently than that, invite their male board counterparts to a meeting and to a reception afterwards, and ask them, to speak and get to know some of the other women members of WCD of that chapter. So we're seeing more of that. And I would say in Europe, different from the US, in Italy, for example, they are very bullish and very specific about having men join the meetings. So we have not kind of mandated anything as WCD, but I think it's the right thing to do. And I applaud you and appreciate the fact that we have so many male faces here. And welcome.
Thank you. Leila, Gloria, please.
Yes, Susan, once we have the pleasure to have you here, could you share with us some best practice, some cases that you have experienced that made the difference in terms of board diversity? Maggie, when she came here, she shared some case. I think it's very interesting for us to hear what is really working outside, because we decided not to talk about benefits of diversity anymore, because we know there are money better. But how can we change the situation? I think this best practice would help us to give some insights.
So I think it really, to your point, Leila, goes back to what WCD is putting together in terms of a diversity plan. I think it's one thing to talk about it, or to say to those of us that know that more diverse boards have better results. I think that's been proven. And now we're at a point where we have to get very intentional and specific about how we increase the number of diverse board members. And that's where, as I was saying, you will hear in the very near future that we have a WCD steering committee that is going to take what the DC group has put together. They're going to take a look at WCD and also at the chapter level and come up with some very specific targeted actions that we think will increase diversity. But I will say, as best practice, in addition to having those actions and timelines, there has to be a measure of what's the goal? How far can we get by when? And then, as I said, I really feel that members of the board, lead directors, chair of the boards, the Nom and Gov committees need to make sure that we are embedding that into those plans, into every boardroom practice, and measuring it and holding people accountable. I think it's beyond saying it's a good thing anymore. To your point, I think we now have to say we're going to do these 5 things over the course of the next 12 months, and then hold everybody accountable, including compensation within companies and so forth, and boards.
Susan, we have one more question from Chris Ashe. Chris, thank you for being so active tonight.
Well, thank you. No, I'm so exciting having you all here. Last week, we have a strong discussion related to the advantage of having gender diversity in a board, but as an opening door for other diversities. And there are people that were against and others were pro. Personally, I think it could be very helpful. What do you think about for other diversity like age, social, racial, and so on? Do you think it's something?
Absolutely. I think, again, going back to, if we look at what is going on around the world, You know, if you say age, we need experience on the board. We need people that have been through crises, you know, in the past. If you look at the racial unrest and the opportunity to talk about how to transform companies so there is a more diverse company and a healthier culture in companies as we go forward, all that speaks to increasing the number of diverse members on boards. And so I'm going to go back to my comment a little bit earlier. I actually believe that the pandemic, the financial crisis, the racial unrest, and so forth globally is accelerating and provides an opportunity for us to exponentially increase diversity and change and transform companies in new and different ways. So again, as tough and as challenging, and just as you said, I'd much rather be there with you in person and rather than Zooming, you know, in having this discussion. But on the other hand, this has allowed us to get together pretty quickly. Later, we will do it in person as well. And every company everywhere, from their employee base to their customer base to their supply chains to their boardrooms, are having to change and rethink how they operate in the future. So that's the opportunity. In crisis, there's opportunity.
It's wonderful. So Susan, before we go to concluding remarks, remember that I had a last question that I didn't make, but Katia Tokoro is in the same page. So we are talking about the international environment that we have at WCG. So Katia, please go ahead. You will be asking the question that I had. Go
okay. Susan, as you have a global view in WCG, which chapters do you consider as benchmarks, and what could we learn from them?
Well, and what I would say is that some chapters are stronger and more robust than others. And I would include Brazil right there. Cynthia Falardo and I talk about you all very often. You are doing such great things, and we applaud you and say, continue. We have chapters in the US that also are very interesting, and just depending upon how you define success, could be very helpful. I mean, our New York chapter, our Boston chapter, we have a South Florida group that is very active, our San Francisco, LA chapters, Colorado. It's pretty impressive. And if you go overseas, if you look at the UK, Mel Richards, who was from KPMG and one of the co-chairs, she has just kind of stepped down, but she's going to stay with the chapter. What they have done with programming and speakers and so forth, she actually was instrumental in bringing several of our keynotes to our institute, Global Institute. So they do some extraordinary things. If we look at Japan, Japan is one of our larger chapters. Now they meet over lunch monthly. And so they have a level of frequency of connecting that's terrific. They're doing some wonderful. So I think if you were to ask, how would I define successful? One would be, are the chapters growing? Are they meeting and having relevant events and programs? Are they allowing for opportunities to network and spend time together and build relationships and have a safe place to talk about things that are challenging in the boardroom? I could go on and on. I mean, we have, in Europe, a number of very successful chapters. Middle East, we have some successful chapters. Asia, Australia, New Zealand, they are incredible. So I just encourage all of you to appreciate the importance of your local chapter network and the opportunity to work together and convene. But I would also put a challenge out there that I encourage each of you to attend at least one of our virtual programs that are coming up, and they're free. So, just attend. get a feel for some of our other chapter members. Gosh, we had one, Cynthia, where we had a member from Nigeria who was so articulate and so passionate about what boards can do to really increase diversity within the workplace and so forth. She was eloquent, and everybody was just inspired. So I encourage you, my challenge to you is to attend one of the upcoming events, get to know some members from other chapters, figure out what's important to you, where do you want to learn, what do you want to learn, and whether it is around a topic, a trend, an issue. Select one of those programs and just get to enjoy the network. You can do it virtually now, and you don't have to travel to San Francisco or to the UK or to Australia. You can get to know people that way. Cynthia, were you going to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to add on to that. So as Susan said, we have our WCD direct programming that you can access in the replay, but you can also, as WCD members, you can attend virtual events all around the globe. So for example, Switzerland is planning an event, London is planning an event. You can sign up via the website. You just sign in and participate. And we've had many chapters that have collaborated to put on programming as well. So if I can help facilitate that or make introductions or connect you, I'm always here to help and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. So Susan, I have to play the role as a timekeeper. It's not a good role, but that's one of my role here tonight. So I will jump to Marianne for her final comments, and then your concluding remarks after Mary, please. Mary, please, you first.
Yeah, so I'd just like to thank Susan for her presence here, and to say we're very proud also to have been recognized 3 times this year. So the first one, our Visionary Global Award, first time to a Brazilian, our Ana Paula Pessoa, member here in Brazil in our Global Institute. So we're very proud of having, the first Brazilian in this award. And then we also got 2 other ones. One, the chapter with most members attending the Global Institute. And the second one, the percentage of renewal of membership as well. And this is a big thanks to, I think, to all of our members and friends as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Susan, please.
And Daniel, I just thank you, Marianne. I was actually, I've been watching Ana Paula there, and I was waiting to recognize her. We're so inspired by all that you do and all that you've done. And it was our pleasure that you received that Visionary Award, and so well deserved. And on every front, you asked the question of how do I define a good chapter or best practices, and you all are exhibiting it. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of WCD. We couldn't be more pleased to have you as our chapter, one of our chapters, and all of our members. And as Cynthia so often says, we are here for you, and anything that we can do to support and kind of help you in our journey over the course of 2021, which is going to be interesting, we are here for you. So thank you for including us.
All right, everyone. So thank you again, Susan, for being with us.
Daniel, thank you. And thank you for being such a wonderful lead and moderator here. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. You are the star tonight, so my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
So everyone, we see each other in a few weeks for our last spotlight of 2020. Susan, once again, thank you for being with us. Cynthia, thank you for being with us as well. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.